fall into one of those starter packs that describe people who are like midway between being a millennial and part of Generation Z, which if you don't, then this video might not make too much sense to you. But if you do, then there's a good chance that the works of Jeff Kinney were a big part of your elementary and middle school and maybe even high school and college and adult experience, particularly his Diary of a Wimpy Kid series. There's a lot to say about these books, and a lot of different things to say about the movies, and there's so much that I plan to talk about them more in the future, but for now, I want to talk about his other main creative venture, the online browser game, Poptropica. So I thought I'd begin by retelling my experience learning about Poptropica, and let me just tell you, going through this was like taking a trip down memory lane. Maybe it's just me, but when I think back to elementary school, I'm not able to remember it coherently, but there's little bits and pieces that stick out that I'm able to recall fondly. For this story, I was in, I want to say like 3rd grade. I can't remember exactly, but it was definitely between 3rd and 5th grade. Remember how in elementary school you would sometimes go to the computer lab? It was always a novel experience being in a room that had the walls lined with rows of computers, and I can only imagine how difficult it was as a teacher trying to somehow monitor a classroom of 10-year-olds each on their own computer, let alone actually try to teach them fucking anything. It must have been on one of these days where the computer lab teacher just couldn't be bothered to give a shit. Either that or we had a substitute, because I remember me and a bunch of my classmates being on Funbrain.com. So Funbrain.com is one of those online educational game websites for kids and parents. Trying to find information about a children's educational game website created in the early 90s is harder than you might think. Evidently they're owned and operated by Pearson, and I'm not sure how Jeff Kinney kind of came into the mix with them, but it was here that he started publishing his early Diary of a Wimpy Kid cartoons back in May of 2004. The website would publish a daily entry until June 2005, presumably when they decided to start putting all of their efforts into the book publication. The website Funbrain.com is still around today, featuring a stylish logo and a surprising amount of stuff to do. There's a bunch of games and videos, like this one, How to Deal with Annoying Siblings. People bring their hearts to a Papa Cloudy because he cleans and mends hearts. The fuck? The video itself isn't much better, it's just some kid Jeremy teaching you how to manipulate your impressionable younger sister to leave you the fuck alone by lying to them.
That doesn't work. You can solve your siblings' sorrows with these. That's for something else. With these. This is a game I like to call Human Fetch. Tell your annoying sister that even though she's more hyper than a squirrel on a sugar high, you actually want to play a game with her. Tell her that you've hidden 3 LOL surprises around the house, and that if she finds all 3 of them, she can keep them. But Jeremy, how does this help me get her out of my hair? Here's the secret. Take 2 LOL surprises, uno dos, and label them 1-3. Uno trace. Toy number 2 is like a fun homework assignment. It doesn't exist. Your spiraling sister will be searching for it until the next Avengers movie comes out. You'll almost feel bad. Keyword, almost.
Apparently this dude is part of a series of videos from another website called Battery Pop, a website/app that produces their own videos and has an entire page dedicated to Minecraft vids, which crashed every time I tried to open it. Which is just as well, because I'm getting way off topic. One final thing I will say about the modern Funbrain site though is that they appear to have the entire first Diary of a Wimpy Kid book available to read on their site. And I mean, that's pretty cool. Anyway, so using the magic of the Wayback Machine, you can get to the old Funbrain website, and I must say, seeing an ad for the SpongeBob SquarePants movie is giving me a blast from the past. You can see where you would have clicked to read the original Diary of a Wimpy Kid cartoons, but unfortunately I wasn't able to get any of them to actually load for me. Anyway, believe it or not, we're actually getting back to Poptropica because this is the Funbrain.com as I actually probably would have seen it. Now, out of everything here, there was only one thing that I and the other kids in my 3rd/4th/5th grade class were interested in doing: the arcade. Now, out of everything so far, this is the screen that I actually remember the most. As you can see, the arcade featured Fruit Loops, first and foremost. It's mostly Fruit Loops, but underneath Toucan Sam, there was a game board reminiscent of Candyland. You would make your way through the game board, playing little mini-games every other space to progress further. And I thought for the sake of this video, I would do a full playthrough of the Funbrain arcade mode. You start by picking your gender and skill level. Now, obviously, I'm a badass, so I'm going for the highest skill level, and perhaps less obviously, I'm also a dude. Now you then pick your character, and I think when I was a kid I chose the bone, but really I could have chosen any one of these. Now for this playthrough I chose the propeller hat because I always thought those were really cool growing up. I always wondered if you could actually fly with them, which would be awesome, but adult life is often disappointing. Anyway, I was excited to finally beat the arcade as I never did in elementary school, but much to my dismay, every time I tried to start the first minigame, it would just reset me back to the start. I guess that's asking too much for the Wayback Machine to remember. All these years later, the arcade has still beaten me. One thing I can say though is that there was one game in the arcade that was more fun than any other, Mighty Guy. I remember going home and playing the arcade and getting further than anyone in the class and learning there was a Mighty Guy 2. I know they were common in early video game history, but since I'm a little bit younger, this was my only experience with password saves in gaming. You could get a password at each minigame so you could continue where you left off, and I remember feeling like the fucking king of the world when I showed up to class and told everybody the password to get to Mighty Guy 2, which I still remember to this day. That was probably the peak of my childhood. So despite the arcade appearing to just be gone, you can still play the original Mighty Guy on funbrain.com today. Going back, I can remember why we liked it so much. It's a platformer where you move by holding the mouse in the direction you want to go. Moving the mouse up will make you jump, moving it down will make you duck, and I think the animations alone were enough to make our feeble minds think it was awesome back in 10-year-old land. It's just so fun to watch Mighty Guy flipping around everything. Anyone who's played Poptropica can already see the connections. Like I said, I originally played this as one of the mini games in the arcade, and I can specifically remember this billboard showing an ad for Poptropica. I thought turning off my ad blocker might show it or some other ad there, but no, it only showed ads before the game and then 2 off to the side. And it also reminded me why I tend to keep my ad blocker on. Like seriously, this website has and evidently never had any shame in marketing everything it can to get little malleable kids to beg their parents for. There's a fair chance I was one of those kids, and I remember never seeing the SpongeBob movie in theaters. I had to wait for it to come out on DVD, and I'm still upset about that. So that billboard ad and others like it sprinkled throughout the arcade convinced my impressionable young mind to check out Poptropica. And it only took 2 pages of script for me to tell you that. So let's finally get into it. Poptropica. Again, it's hard to find the process by which Poptropica popped into existence. Wikipedia just says it was primarily the creation of Jeff Kinney. So cryptic origin story aside, let's get into the actual game. Right away, the game gives me flashbacks to Flash games of old and having to enable Flash to play them. But by the way, rest in peace Flash, sometime in 2020, I don't know the actual date. I was actually able to remember my old username and password and was loaded into some kind of hub world. From here, I was able to see my former self's idea of a cool character, and I also learned that my current self's idea of a cool character is exactly the same. Just look at those teeth. So I was kind of just like wandering around the hub area when I wandered into the movie theater. I was expecting like a little charming short film about Poptropica with Poptropica characters, but no, instead I got ads for Poptropica. A lot, actually. They were really loud and really obnoxious. And I could not for the life of me figure out how to leave the theater, so I just refreshed the page. Maybe there actually is a movie in there after all, but with all those ads and how loud they were, yeah, I'm not going back in the movie theater. So this whole area, hub world place that you start the game in, this is all new to me. Back in my day, you would just start the game and pick an island and go to it, at least so far as I remember. The music here on this hub world is just far too orchestral and whimsical than it has any right to be. Just listen to some of this. So I didn't know what to do or what I was doing, so I just wandered around. I found a wheel to spin, and I won myself 125 credits, and it was here that I learned that there's also credits in this game now, and I also have no idea what they're used for. I went to the menu and learned that there's just a lot of new icons I had no idea about. There's an item inventory for pets and for prizes and for my home island, all of which are empty. There's a costumizer tool, which seems to let you wear anything worn by any other character on screen, and that's pretty cool. I end up using that throughout this playthrough, more than I would care to admit. There's also friends you can add on Poptropica, and just like in real life, I don't have any. I was able to give myself a heart though. I don't know what it does, but I gave myself one. So yeah, I also apparently have a clubhouse that I'm able to decorate, which I definitely did. It's only the most basic of clubhouse though, because I don't have the premium membership, nor do I plan on getting one. There's a ton of stores in this hub area. I wandered around into a pet shop and I thought I could use those credits I won to buy a pet, but no, they just kind of let me take it, so I cannot get a goat or a bunny, however, as I am too poor. So now I'm the owner of a red dog, and I thought you could at least name the dog, but I cannot find a way to do that. So Clifford, I am sorry, you're just puppy for now. And man, the music, it's just so bombastic. It's just, I think it sounds nice on one of the islands, but it's just like a little too much for this, calm hub area place. Apparently Disney is partnered with Poptropica because there's a little Disney area that you can go to on the hub, and I did, and it was a mistake because it took like 20 years to load. I'm guessing Big City Greens is a cartoon on Disney, but it's not one that I think I'm going to watch. It does not look very appealing. Regardless, I do not feel like playing this. There's also an arcade, but I'm getting kind of tired of this whole hub area. What I remember Poptropica for are the islands. The main bulk of the game is made up of a ton of these little various islands, each one with their own little quest on it. You travel to the island to complete the quest by talking to NPCs and completing whatever little story there is for you. There's a lot of islands, more than there were back in the day. The only one I remember completing was Superhero Island, and since it's the only one I remember, I thought it'd be the one I start with. So as you can see, after all these years, it's still not officially beaten. Even though I beat the main quest, I remember this, so I don't know what the game wants from me more. But apparently I didn't do enough, and it's as far as I ever got on any of the islands. So for the sake of this video, I decided to lose all that hard-earned progress and start the island over from scratch. The sacrifices I'm willing to make. Anyway, so on this island, there was a prison break, and they need a new superhero to catch all the criminals and save the day. So you just kind of meander on over and talk to the comic book store owner who gives you his guide on how to be a superhero. Right next door is a superhero costume shop, which, as the observant hero that I am, I noticed was one of the requirements in the superhero guide. What is not a requirement, however, is music or sound of any kind on this island because there is none of either. So apparently in this universe, the leading authority on superhero officiality is the owner of the costume store, because he just kind of hands me a superhero ID card, even though I've never even bought a costume before, so thank you for the vote of confidence, dude. He also lets me mix and match whatever kind of costume I want, all for free, so this dude is the real hero of the story, I think. So right next door to the costume shop is the very cleverly named Daily Paper building, on top of which you will find a real superhero who's apparently fed up with all the city's shit and tells us to come back to him after we've defeated at least 5 villains. Inside the Daily Paper building is a common room. I think back in the day this was where players could actually meet other real people. The MM portion of this MMORPG was restricted to these separate rooms. I can remember back in the day seeing real people in here, but for now it was just me and Puppy. Anyway, so you find a paper and it tells you that a meteor smashed into the prison walls, hence the breakout. There's this cop who tells me that I'm requested at the prison, even though when I went over there earlier I wasn't allowed in. With my new superhero ID card, despite clearly not being a superhero yet, I was allowed in. Thank you, costume shop owner. Here, the prison warden just kind of hands over all the information about all of the prisoners. Once you get the ID card and costume, nobody really seems to question you. All of those escaped villains should really take note here. Also, if Metallica has taught me anything, Copycat is by far the most dangerous villain here. Talking to the scientist at the prison, I learned that the meteor gave the previously vanilla villains powers, but she also conveniently gives me the anti-power handcuffs to catch them. I guess they just kind of assume that it's my job now to get them all, even though I never said I would. Well, I guess I will. So making my way over to the bank, I find Copycat just yucking it up inside. Now, despite having the perfect opportunity to catch her, I decide to let her talk and split into multiple clones. It's just a game of catching them all before time runs out. I will say though, having the smoke from her smoke bomb slowly fill the room, it's effectively suspenseful. And as easy as these kids games are, they give you an appropriate amount of time because it may or may not have taken me more than one try to get her. Okay, the first time I just barely ran out of time, and the second I accidentally pressed back on my mouse. Once you capture her though, she's put back into prison and you're good to go catch the other 4. I decided that if I'm going to be the face of law and order in this town, I should dress like it. I soon found that Speeding Spike had hijacked the train and just couldn't be angrier about it. Inside the train, you slip on some water and you have to lure Speeding Spike to it from the back of the train. It's not that hard and there's no penalty for getting hit other than Spike going back a little bit, but it's a little fun battle that I could imagine kids getting engrossed in. I'm pretty sure I was back then. At the park, you see Cerebral, got it, doing some casual telekinesis, and the pretty chill hot dog vendor gives me a hot dog while I try to steal his haircut, so thanks dude. I dodged some rocks being flown about when I realized I had to take a piss and made my way to the bathroom. Inside, I went down to the sewers that lead up directly into the bathroom, and opened up a drain somewhere and lowered the water. It's amazing how I haven't played this game in years, and yet somewhere in my brain it remembers this location. I was pondering this while my dog kept suffering. So I kind of wander around when I eventually found the rat man just kind of chilling in the sewers. He sends his radioactive rats or whatever at you, and you have to just make your way up to a valve or a wheel or whatever this thing is called to release some shit water on him. Then you have to get to him while his flies chase you. It's by no means difficult, but yeah, it's a fun little battle. After putting him away, I found the mine guy, Cerebral, again. I can't go into the girls' bathroom, so I'm out of ideas. I actually didn't know what to do, but all you need to do is guide the rocks he flies towards him to whack him once, then push the big boulder towards him so he can hit himself with it when he raises the ground. So my mouse has a back and forward button, and I kept hitting the back button on my mouse, sending me to the last room and having to start this fight over. Fortunately, it's only these 2 steps to beat him, and it takes like 2 minutes. We still have 2 left. Betty Jetty and Crusher. It kind of annoys me that they send you all the way back to the prison at the edge of the map whenever you catch one of these guys, but that's probably the most petty annoyance anyone has ever made about a browser game for kids. So you find Crusher at the junkyard, and if you click on him, your character will just infinitely jump at him, as happy as can be. If you're on the ground and Crusher crushes, you just fall over, so you just have to jump past him to the electromagnet behind him and climb up to completely demolish him by dropping a freaking refrigerator on him. But he just gets annoyed and throws it off, so you just have to do the exact same thing while he throws barrels at you. You get back over to the electromagnet to turn it back on to attract the metal he's standing on. It's not very tough, but I remember as a little kid being proud of myself for doing this. So as I was walking back to find Betty Jetty, I heard I didn't really hear, I saw the payphone ringing, so I went inside to answer it, and lo and behold, I could fly now. I remember being able to fly was the reward once you captured all the villains, and it seemed like it'd be a good one, but you need to fly to capture the last villain, Betty Jetty. Her fight definitely feels the most gamey, and it's definitely the hardest. You just have to chase her and dodge her projectiles. You get closer to her the longer you last, and if you get whacked like 3 times or so, you fall and have to restart. It actually took me a couple of tries because, and this is true, I'm actually bad at video games. And also because I thought you had to fly as close to her as possible to catch her, but no, you can just hang back and eventually you'll be able to fly and hit her. So once you hit her and she falls, it looks like you'll have to fight her again, but Ned Noodlehead runs in and saves the day. Remember him, the dude from the comic shop at the beginning? He slaps her and you're finally able to arrest her. It's kind of funny because the mayor, or this dude who apparently has the authority to give away medallions, gives it to Ned instead of you. But I was able to trade it in from Ned for that hot dog. And that is Superhero Island, and a rundown of what a standard quest looks like on a Poptropica island. I remember being so proud of myself for beating this when I was a kid. It's the only island I ever beat by myself, and as you saw, there's probably monkeys out there who would be capable of getting at least halfway, so it's not much of an accomplishment, but it was a fun little game. What I do remember being hard as shit was Astro Knight's Island. I have no idea what this island even was, other than the fact that it was so cryptic that I needed a walkthrough just to figure out what to do, like from the very beginning. Well, that was elementary school Nick. Which, by the way, even though my YouTube name is Sir Rick the Nick, my name's actually the Nick part, not Rick. So, I know it's confusing. Well, now it's college hiatus Nick. So let's see if I can't best Astro Knight's Island now. So I do not know what my younger self was thinking because I should have realized that this would have been way too tough for me because this is the hardest difficulty. We're going from arguably the easiest island to one of the hardest, so let's see if I can actually figure out what the fuck to do here. Admittedly, the premise sounds pretty cool. It sounds like a medieval sci-fi mix where the princess has been captured and I have to travel to space to find her. Alright, so you get in your blimp, you land on the island, and you soon find out that the kingdom is under attack. So I kind of just wander around, and the first place I tried to go to was this museum, but the dude kicked me out because I don't have the gold piece required to get in. He did give me a pamphlet though. It's apparently a museum for the dude who made this medieval world all sci-fi with technology, but got landed in prison for some experiments he'd been doing. There's a statue and a plaque for this guy. I remember this plaque being important. There's some code I need to press with the planets, and I'll be able to go underneath the statue. Now before, I needed a walkthrough to tell me what to do, but this time, I'm gonna be a big boy, figure it out for myself. Apparently there's some deep lore for Poptropica because I was kind of just hopping around on the island when I clicked on an ad that sent me to an Amazon page for a book about the island. And apparently it's pretty good. There's a lot of good reviews here. And there's other books on other islands and guides and fuck, there's a whole market here I had no idea existed. So yeah, for anybody who wants to go in deep on the history and lore of the various Poptropica islands, here you go. So I continue onward, I make my way to the observatory, I learn that this dude Mordred built it with all his fancy tech, but apparently nothing works except for the telescope because power is out for the entire island. You can look through the telescope and see presumably their moon with a bunch of satellites and some other planets. I must say, this setting is pretty cool. A medieval society that sporadically received a bunch of futuristic sci-fi technology. That's pretty interesting. I found a common room like on Superhero Island, but this time it's an inn, and just like on the other island, there's nobody else here. But you know what, that might be just as well, because I'm not sure I want to find out just how potentially toxic the competitive Poptropica community is. Anyway, so yeah, this place was invaded by aliens, and apparently they kidnapped the princess. So I kind of just waltz on over, and when I say waltz, I mostly mean hopped 10 feet in the air, over to the castle, and I find this lady who tells me she feels kind of responsible for the princess's kidnapping because the princess used her to send secret letters to a secret society that this lady would leave by the fountain from earlier. Also on the counter I find a secret letter of presumably the princess saying she needs a new password, otherwise her parents might find out about whatever it is she's doing. So I find that the king and queen are just kind of sulking about in their throne room, and they tell me that the princess is kidnapped and I'll be knighted if I find her, and the queen gives me some coordinates that some of the other knights use to search for the princess themselves. So at this point I knew I had a lead with a potential note by the fountain, but I thought I would just keep going right to see what else there is. So I go to the next screen and this guy just gives me a bag of manure. Thanks. This is where the peasants seem to live, and there's this mill up here that doesn't turn anymore, so some of the locals just decided to make it like a dive bar inside. Once inside, if you climb to the top, you find this goth-looking girl who tells me she'll tell me her secret if I tell her mine. The game immediately gives her that secret note I found, and she gives me the password for the entrance since she realizes I must be part of the order of whatever. It would have been kind of cool if I could have chosen the note myself to give to her. Maybe my inventory could have opened automatically and I could have figured out what to give her instead of the game just automatically doing it. But it's a small nitpick. I managed to find a rope to pull that I thought would get the gears going and make the mill start turning again, but it didn't seem to do anything. There also appeared to be like a hoverboard or something up top that I wasn't able to get to yet. I also wasn't able to go past the mill outside, and I found a rope which I tried and failed to somehow use anywhere in or outside the mill. Instead of going back to the fountain yet, I went left of where I spawned in and found that there wasn't anywhere else to go over here. I must say, this game had me thinking about what I should do with this rope and manure and coordinates. To the game's credit, it had the gears turning in my head. So at the fountain, I found a gold coin that I missed my first time there, and I went to the museum. When I talked to the dude inside, I actually had to go to my inventory and select the coin, which was a nice touch. So this is the house of that dude Mordred, and I wasn't allowed to actually touch anything since they keep the museum exactly as he left it, so there didn't seem to be too much to do here now other than to get a copy of his library book slip, which I have no idea what to do with it, but hey, I have it now. Alright, so now I went to the fountain for realsies, and I looked at the pattern input, and then immediately forgot it and had to check again. I knew I remembered clicking on the plaque to go inside the fountain. I clicked the 3 symbols, but nothing happened. But you have to click the big one in the center at last, which makes sense. So you go down below the fountain where you find these guys who worship this dude Mordred like he's a cult leader. They say they think he hid something on the windmill and that even though he was shot into space, he still lives. Also, even though they've never seen me before, this one dude just gives me the key they found to his house. I didn't seem to find anything for the key to unlock in his house though, so I went back to the windmill. I went up top and there's like this glass dome up there that I couldn't seem to do anything with or unlock. I couldn't seem to unlock anything inside the mill either, so I had a bag of manure, some rope, some coordinates, a library book slip, and a key, and I had no idea what to do with any of these things. The game actually stumped me here for a little bit. So I was just doing what I do, hopping around the outside of the castle when I saw this big siege crossbow, or whatever it's called. I actually vaguely remember this from my first playthrough way back when and having the walkthrough tell me what to do. It's actually a little bit cryptic because there's no, so far as I saw, indication that you're supposed to do this. What you do is jump around the outside of the castle till you get to the crossbow, and this is where you select the rope to tie around it. There's no hint for this or anything, you just kind of have to figure it out. Once you tie it, you can now shoot the crossbow, and you're supposed to shoot it at this tower door that's off to the side. Now you can tightrope walk your way over to this door that was previously inaccessible. So this room that we just shot the crossbow at is the princess's room, and the arrow being visible through the door from the inside was a nice touch. You find a half-destroyed note of hers saying that Mordred was known for hiding his stuff under his bed. So I went back there and I searched underneath his bed and found a torn out piece of paper from a journal of his, all of which is kind of nonsense because I tried looking under his bed earlier, but my character stopped himself because he felt no reason to look there, which again is some grade A nonsense, but whatever. So his note says that he found a nearby moon with some alien activity, and also, conveniently enough, animal waste makes decent fuel for rockets. How about that? Anyway, he says there should be enough in Arturus, which is apparently the name of the city we're in, to bring his flying craft to said moon with some coordinates. Apparently, in all of outer space, you only need 2 two-digit numbers to get to where you need to go. Space-time be damned. But this is in the same universe where animal waste makes decent fuel, so I guess it's fine. So now, with all this new, enticing information, I had zero clue what to do. I figured that hoverboard thing would be my way out of here, but I had no idea how to get there. I went back to, I think it's the handmaiden's room, and there's this little robot rat on the floor that always scurries back to its hole whenever you get too close. I had no idea what to do with it, but I felt as though it was important. I didn't have any food or anything to lure it out with, and I'm pretty sure I couldn't fit in the hole there. So, whenever you have no idea what to do in this game, you just go back to Old Reliable. Wander around aimlessly. Doing that in the castle, I found a room I somehow overlooked completely, a library. And I had that library book slip, so I figured I should check out the book Mordred was reading. The library was destroyed by the aliens though, so I just kind of walked by and grabbed 2 books. One was a history of Mordred, and you learn that he was a scientist that everybody loved, but then he dabbled in the dark sciences, and they sent him to jail, and he escaped, and then he kept doing his spooky science, and right before they captured him again, he built a rocket and went to space. The second book was like a guide of the magical weapons of this palace, and I had no idea what to do with this information. So neither of those 2 books actually have anything to do with that library book class. If you click on the library shelf underlined on the pass, a secret staircase reveals itself. There's no indication in the library that there's anything here, so you actually have to figure it out yourself, which is pretty cool. It's not Sherlock Holmes, but you do have to look at the book pass and look at the room to find out what to do with the connection, so it's a nice little bit of detective work for a kid's game. So, going down the stairs, you find a dungeon with a plate of cheese and a robot in a jail cell. Wouldn't have been my first guess as to what's underneath the library, but there you go. You flip a switch to open an entrance behind the robot and collect the cheese because that's all you can do. Once you go back up, you find 2 guards who tell you to forget everything you saw and who won't let you go down there again. It's not much, but it's a nice little moment that makes you feel like the people and the world around you are actually reacting to your presence here. So, because I'm a genius, I went back to that other room with the robot mouse, set the cheese down, and boom, the mouse is yours, and you can release him whenever. He doesn't really do much other than come right back to you, so I figured I'd have to send him through his little hole and then I could see where it led to, but that didn't seem to do anything, so now I was lost again. I just started releasing the mouse randomly to see if anybody would react to it. So I was doing what I do, again, just kind of fumbling about when I went back towards the mill, and on the way there, there's these 2 barrels of hay. Is that what they're called? And what you're supposed to do is kind of fumble your way in between them so you can separate them, and in the middle is a locked hatch. This is where you use that key those guys under the fountain gave you to unlock the hatch so you can go into Mordred's lair, where he has a framed picture of himself. So far as I know, there's no clue telling you to do this, but the hay barrels there are just suspicious enough to make you wonder if they have anything to do with anything. This is another case of me just vaguely remembering this from my first time playing through with the walkthrough, so I do have that benefit. So in his lair, you find the entirety of his journal, basically telling you that the dark science he was working on that freaked everybody out involved him combining animal DNA and robotics to create the robotic animals, which you can see were apparently the mouse I caught and an owl that apparently can fly wherever the owner points it. I like how in the journal you can see the page missing that you found earlier. At the end of the room, there's this wall that breaks if you just push on it for a while, and an entrance to the jail cell with the robot that you opened earlier. This is the jail cell that Mordred was in, and you went back through the tunnel he made to escape, which is really cool. It's cool hearing about what this guy did, and then reverse engineering your way back through it all. So when you see the robot, he just explodes, and then drops a vial of green science juice, and I thought, finally, this is where I can use the mouse. But no, he doesn't do anything, so I had to find another way to get to the other side again. Once I went back outside the lair, suddenly that owl was just flying around outside, even though he'd never been there before. This is where you use the mouse. The mouse's only purpose was to get killed so you can have the owl. I think I would have preferred if the owl was in the game world already, maybe just trapped or disinterested, so once you have the mouse you can put 2 and 2 together and surmise what to do with it to get the owl, as opposed to the owl just appearing out of nowhere once you leave the lair, but I digress. So now that you have the owl, you can just click on him and then click somewhere in the game world and have him fly there. You take him down to the jail cell again, and finally you can collect that science juice that's apparently a fuel rod. I thought I could use the owl to somehow get the hoverboard, but he doesn't seem to want to follow you inside. Not only does he not follow you inside, he doesn't follow you outside of the outside area you found him at. So would you believe I got lost for like a 3rd time in this flash game for kids? I had no idea what to use the fuel rod for, so I thought maybe those computers back up the observatory, but apparently not. So again, I was just kind of flipping around, doing my thing, when I went back to the mill and started jumping on the windmill turbines. This is actually pretty clever because you're supposed to manually turn the windmill yourself by jumping on them, which opens up the hatch at the top, and finally you can get in there. So now you can finally collect that hoverboard and you give it some good old-fashioned manure, because manure is fuel in these games, but not for UFOs, only for hoverboards. And after you do that, it escapes out the top and you can jump on it to get across that mud that you weren't able to walk across earlier. And now you find said crashed UFO, and this UFO can't take manure, it has to take that fuel rod, so you give it the fuel rod and finally the damn thing powers up. So yeah, now you have a powered up UFO, but you still can't go to space yet. You need to input some coordinates, and I actually had multiple coordinates to go by. I had the queens that she gave me me earlier that the 3 knights used to track the princess themselves, and I had a pair of coordinates that I found in Mordred's journal, and I went ahead and just started with his. And so, yeah, you go to space. You watch a little cutscene of your UFO leaving the planet and crash landing on the moon, and it's actually pretty cool. I remember really enjoying this as a kid because it felt so adventurous. I didn't expect the story to actually go here. It felt like such a leap from where we started. It's a cool little moment. At least it was at the time, and it still is here. So even though the owl didn't want to follow you inside the windmill, he's actually cool just following you inside a random UFO and going to space because he's with me here. And you're, unsurprisingly, able to jump much higher here on the moon. We actually crash landed on the moon because the UFO ran out of fuel. So you step outside of your crashed UFO to this wide-eyed happy alien who greets you, and right next to him is this big old thingamajig to build your own rocket. But you can't use it yet. Apparently the boss won't let you, so you go and talk to the boss, and he's like, oh yeah, it's cool, just sell me your old UFO for parts, and you have free reign to build your own spaceship to your liking for free, so I do that. But before I do, I find this guy who tells me about this other guy called the Binary Bard, an evil sorcerer who apparently attacked this moon settlement, making me wonder if that guy's Mordred. So yeah, you can design your own ship now. You can choose the body and the wings and change the color and position of them. The different parts affect a speed and shield stat, but they don't really tell you what those do, so I just kind of made a design favoring shield. And once you do that, you can go inside and launch your ship. So unlike the UFO that took you to the moon with just a small little cutscene, you actually manually fly around in your ship with the coordinates at the bottom. And they were nice enough to let you click on the 3 coordinates that the queen gave you at the bottom as well. So I decided to go to the first set of coordinates first, and you just move the ship left and right to adjust X and up and down to adjust Y, as expected, and you just fly towards the right spot, try to match up the numbers, and hopefully arrive towards your destination. So the first set of coordinates takes you to this big ass planet being swarmed by space sharks, and even though I had full shields, they killed me in one hit and sent me back to the moon. The hit detection on these things is awful. I mean, look at this. Look at this! I'm not even anywhere close to these fucking sharks. It was at this point that I realized I had a gun this whole time, but it didn't seem to do anything to these sharks because I still died. So even when I got past them, it said it was too unsafe to land on the planet, so I just said fuck it and went to the second set of coordinates instead. So the trek to this planet was nice and smooth in comparison, and I was able to just land. I like how they make space feel decently big, not huge, but it does take a little while to get to where you need to go, and passing in front of stars is a nice touch. So you land on the planet, and you have to do a little bit of platforming, jumping over vines and swinging off ropes to get to where you need to go. If you go right, you find one of the knights that the queen sent to find the princess, who says he has failed because he could not defeat the giant phoenix. He does not explain how or why he has to get you to find his weapon that he dropped on the floor, but I digress. If you go back out onto the jungle floor, you find the lance from that book that he just happened to drop on a pedestal that looks like it was made just for that lance. This is one of the 3 mythical weapons that the knights were sent with to go find the princess that I think Mordred made? I'm not really too sure where they came from, but this is one of them, and you use it to try and fight the giant phoenix. So you jump on top of the little phoenix eggs, and then you get to the Pegasus. There's apparently a Pegasus that's for some reason trapped in a cage. You then get on the Pegasus and fly away to fight the Mama Phoenix. You then proceed to have a little minigame boss fight that reminds me of the Betty Jetty fight from the Superhero Island, and it's okay, but it'd be better if you didn't have to wait like a minute dodging these little bees before the actual boss, the Mama Phoenix, shows up. You just waste your time until she gets here, and if the fight started once she got there, it'd be decent, but as it stands, it's just a little bit longer than it needs to be. And she's also a little bullshit because she's one of those bosses that appears for a little bit whenever she's vulnerable, and then after you hit her, she disappears off screen again so she can send out more attacks. So she dictates the flow of the battle, not you, which is a little boring. But you just charge up the lance, hit her 3 times, and she goes down. The knight says the Pegasus was a decoy, somehow. Did you think the princess was actually in that cage and not a horse with wings? Well, in any case, he decides he's coming with you now, so you and him teleport back to your ship, and off you go. Alright, so after the knight gets on your ship with you, I can't tell you what happens next. Okay, so this is where the story gets kind of weird. So like I said at the beginning of the video, I was able to log onto my old Poptropica account, and I was able to go to the map and see the long list of all the game's islands, including the OG islands that I remember playing as a kid. And obviously, I was able to play them too, as I did for Superhero and most of Astro Knight's Island. I have the footage for it. You just saw me play it. Well, I was recording gameplay over multiple sessions on multiple days, and for the most part, it worked like normal. I would just log on and continue from the island I was on last, and that was that. So once the knight got on my ship, that was where I decided to end that day's session. A couple of days later, I decided to get back on and continue, but Astro Knight's Island just wasn't there. In fact, nearly all of the old islands just weren't there anymore. They just disappeared overnight for me. I had no idea what happened when I saw this. They still update the Poptropica Twitter, which, by the way, topical, and apparently they're releasing a new island, so I thought maybe they updated the game and got rid of all the old islands, and I thought, what are the odds that they would do this while I'm in the middle of playing an old island? So I donned my deerstalker, and yes, that's what those hats are called, and did some digging, by which I mean some basic Googling, and found some other people asking about the same thing. So the information I got told me that apparently people with an old account were still able to find and play the old islands, as I was. People were speculating that the old accounts still hold the data of the old islands and thus were able to play them while the new accounts couldn't. As for why they removed the old islands, one user in this thread from the Poptropica fandom wiki shared a supposed response from an email they sent to Poptropica explaining that the Poptropica team removed the old islands that ran on the game's old engine because of apparent browser compatibility problems in an effort to make the game ready for Flash's end in 2020. So, I mean, I don't know the inner workings of websites and game engines and Flash and its eventual going away, but I can imagine all that making sense. The only question that remains unanswered to me is why my account did show and allow me to play the old islands, and then randomly decided one morning that I'd played enough of them and got rid of them all. So, unfortunately, it seems I won't be able to finish Astro Knight's Island. The game. However, that doesn't mean I won't be able to find closure for the Astro Knight's world. Remember back at the beginning of my playthrough when I found myself getting sent to an Amazon page for Astro Knight's Island, the book? Well, I've determined that if I couldn't find closure in Astro Knight's Island, the game, maybe it exists in Astro Knight's Island, the novel. But before I committed to purchasing the novelization of Astro Knight's Island, I looked further into it and found out there's a whole host of these Poptropica books based off of various Poptropica worlds. So the Astro Knights one was written by Tracy West, world-renowned children's book author of the Dragon Masters series. This book series is apparently still going strong. They're up to book 13 now, and the last book came out in April of this year, which is 2019 for future historians. Her books are super cheap on Amazon, but they all have really good reviews, and she's also written a bunch of books based off of other various random properties. She evidently knows her way around a game because she's written the official handbook to RuneScape, Beyblade, Yu-Gi-Oh!, as well as other classics like Pikachu in Love, apparently with a shuckle. I don't know if they still have them, but I can guarantee at least some of her books have been on display at various scholastic book fairs. Well, with all those titles under her belt and the fact that I did not have closure for Astro Knight's Island, I did the only logical next step. You know I bought the damn book. So the book starts a little bit before your arrival in the game. The protagonist is a stable boy named Simon who is tired of his daily drudgery of managing stables and such and wants nothing more than to be like the Knights of Arcturus he so widely admires. We see him at the beginning of what appears to be just another day when, just 7 pages in, some floating discs appear out of the sky and start raising all types of hell. The Knights of Arcturus arrive and somehow manage to take down one of the discs and the rest of the discs fly away, but not before they realize the princess was kidnapped. So the 3 knights that this kingdom only has, apparently, have sworn to bring her back. The king gives them the 3 mythical weapons of Arcturus, which that dude Mordred made. I think. I'm still not sure about that. One of which is the lance that I used in the game before the game decided to be a piece of shit and give up on me and not show me the other 2. One thing I don't remember from the game is that apparently the dude who they saw take the princess was half metal, half human. Anyway, so that's how the book starts, and it's not bad. It was entertaining for what it was, and I could imagine kids enjoying it. It actually got me to laugh. Chapter 3 ends with Simon saying triumphantly that the Knights of Arcturus will never be defeated, only for Chapter 4 to immediately begin by saying the Knights of Arcturus have been defeated. It's about here that when the story begins in the game, not too long after the knights left to try and rescue the princess. Only now, instead of some outsider who arrived in this kingdom on a blimp, it's Simon and his friend Alice, a handmaid from the castle. Alright, so continuing in the book, it's Alice's turn to decide what to do today, so even though Simon doesn't really give a shit about Mordred, Alice decides to visit the Mordred Museum. And unfortunately, even though the pictures in the book follow the same artistic aesthetic as the game, the same cannot be said for how they get around. They just seem to walk from place to place, as opposed to parkouring off of buildings and jumping 10 feet in the air. At this point, the progression of events that our protagonists take in this book is pretty much the same that you take in the game, with some added flavor added in, which is nice. I like Simon's disinterest in Mordred contrasted with Alice's enthusiasm, and they have good chemistry because of it. So, I mean, I kind of skimmed over the rest of the book from this point on. Simon delivers a message to the king and queen and feels bad when he finds them depressed and says he'll rescue their daughter, and they give him those coordinates. Simon and Alice eventually find their way inside the windmill and find that weird chick who gives them the code to the hideout below the fountain. The book really does follow all the same beats as the game. Simon even ends up shooting and walking across the crossbow bolt to the princess's door. So the pair end up finding out about the secret of turning the windmill to open the dome on top quicker than I did, as a matter of fact. They find the hoverboard and then learn it runs on manure, and then they take it to the crashed UFO site and realize they need fuel to run it. I must have played this part of the game wrong because, as you remember, I did this whole sequence of events out of order. So Simon and Alice find the robot Al, and then they find that robot in the jail cell that explodes, and then they use the Al to retrieve the fuel, and then they use the fuel to power the UFO, and then yeah, now they're in space. They crash on the moon, they meet the alien mechanic, and then they make their own spaceship. The book hits all the same beats. One difference is that they go to the ice planet first, the one that I tried to go to first with the space sharks surrounding it, and just like me, they couldn't get through. Unlike me, however, they realize that you're not actually supposed to shoot the sharks or go past them, you're supposed to lure them to a nearby black hole. So yeah, that would have been useful to realize. Alright, so I'm going to kind of skip ahead here a little bit. You already saw what happens on the jungle planet. On the ice planet, Simon uses the shield to deflect snow and defeat a tiger copter. And on the fire planet, he uses the ice arrow to defeat a dragon. Each time, the trained, brave knights just kind of step aside and let him do all the work. So remember the binary bard? He was that evil dude that one dude talked about that one time. He's the guy that set all these traps for the knights. So now that they rescued them all, Simon and Alice have to go to some asteroid to get a key that'll take them to the binary bard. They get there and the knights try to move the key, but it won't work, so Simon and Alice have to because they're the chosen ones or something. I kind of glossed over any explanation of what that was about. So they find out that the binary bard is in fact Mordred. They also find the princess, who says that Mordred isn't who she thought he was. Remember, she kind of like was part of the cult surrounding him? Well, he wants to force her to marry him so he can be king of the universe. As you can see, Mordred makes a bold assumption thinking that the entire universe would recognize the authority of one king from one kingdom, and he was also nice enough to let her parents live, making her still just a princess and not a queen. So Mordred gets in that big mech you saw on the cover, and you can imagine what this fight would look like in the game. A lot of jumping around and using the weapons to damage Mordred. But long story short, Simon and Alice defeat Mordred and, with the princess, fly back home where they're lauded for their bravery and knighted on the spot. The whole thing wraps up neat and tidy, as I can assume the game would have as well. So, that's Poptropica. Both 2 of the islands and 1 of the books. At least that's Poptropica as I remember it. Like I showed at the beginning of the video, like 2 hours ago, there's a lot of stuff to do in Poptropica now, most of which doesn't interest me. There's different stores and friends and pets and places you can go, and there's a mode called Realms and all this other fluff that just, nah. I see a lot of YouTube videos of people talking about their experiences with websites like Newgrounds and Addicting Games and something monkey in the Flash games that those websites had, and I remember playing some of those too, but Poptropica definitely had an impact on me, and I never really see anybody talk about it anymore. There was like a DS game and merchandise, so the game evidently was a success and must have made money, but like I said, nobody ever mentions it, so I wanted to bring it up. Astro Knight's Island blew my mind as a kid, even though I needed a walkthrough for literally every step of it. It was so cool to see my character wind up piloting a rocket ship in space. It really felt like a little adventure, solving puzzles and discovering clues. It was a well done little self-contained game for kids in a fun and unique setting that clearly I remember fondly. So I was going to play one last Poptropica Island, one that I never played as a kid, but this script is already 15 pages and almost 10,000 words, or 10% of an average novel. Even though it feels like a relic of my childhood, Poptropica is still going strong, or so it seems. They're definitely still keeping the game alive. I hope that they still find success even after Flash officially stops being supported, even though they took away my classic islands in the middle of my playthrough. If you have like a younger sibling or just a kid who would enjoy something to do online, I recommend you show them Poptropica, because if they're like me, they'll enjoy it and make some memories on the game. Or if nothing else, maybe they can at least beat Mighty Guy 2. My lasting gift to you can be the password to get to it on funbrain.com.